This is Reginald Durant with our Durant Workshop. Today I have put together a video slide presentation on the build for base cabinets for the dry side of the kitchen galley. I used Google SketchUp to create the design first, and after a lot of discussion, my roommate and I agreed on a knotty pine style face frame and panels for all the doors and drawers. Unfortunately, during the time of this build, I had not been filming on a regular basis. However, I did take extensive photos, so please forgive the lack of video footage and appreciate the photo slides I've included here. This was filmed and photographed between March 30th and July 2nd of last year, 2020. I did not have any footage of the cuts for all of the panels of the cabinet boxes. However, here is some footage of using the Delta sliding table on my Unisaw to make the dado cuts using the Forest Dado King for the sides of the large pantry and other boxes. All of the kitchen cabinets will be made from 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood. These come in 60-inch by 60-inch sheets, so that will explain the interesting assembly method I was using for that 8-foot pantry. I then used the Craig Foreman to pocket hole all pieces for the build. You will notice I did not use glue during the builds. This is because we may wish to modify the design depending on how everything works out and the usability over the next year or so of the kitchen, and want to be able to easily disassemble the cabinets and rebuild them. Demonstrating the ease of assembly and disassembly for the 8-foot cabinet, I put this one together in the workshop to take final measurements for the face frame and to be sure it will fit in its final location in the kitchen. After the photos, I disassembled it and stored it flat on the pallet rack that is now in the Our Durant workshop. Stephanie Duncan, my roommate, has partnered with me for this project and on many others. With her help, we have set up an assembly line for cutting, dado cuts, pocket holes, sanding, and then finishing, and then final assembly. It worked out pretty slick for this project. Later last summer, I acquired an Erlex spray station and very much look forward to seeing how much that speeds up this process from hand painting everything. During assembly of these large cabinet boxes, I quickly discovered I did not have enough clamps for more than one assembly at a time. This was very frustrating, and I started searching for sales on clamps. I found Bessie parallel clamps and Rockler pie clamps at decent prices and ordered them immediately. But due to pandemic delays, I did not get them in time to use them on this build. But I have them now for the next cabinets and the drawers for the wet wall and wall cabinets. Moving on to the face frames, I used 1x3 furring strips. I found these to have similar tonal qualities as the pine common boards I was using for the drawer fronts and cabinet door panels. However, they must be kept stored flat, with weight on them, and off the cement. These boards, though advertised as kiln dried, are just not initially stable without sealing them. If you wait too long, the long boards twist and cup extensively. I had 10 of them sitting on a Bobcat 463 overnight inside the garage, which is a metal frame. The next morning, when I came out to move them to the rack, almost all had twisted and bent down to the ground from the top of the 6-foot tall skid steer. With moisture, heat, and weight, these can be flattened again and somewhat straightened, but it is much better to immediately put them on a flat, dry, stable storage surface with weight on them to allow them to dry for the next 4 to 6 weeks before milling the face frames. The last order I have is from 4 months ago. After being in the temperature stable workshop, they should now be stable enough to mill without the issues from the first cabinets. At least I hope so. I used pocket holes to attach the face frames to the cabinets. Many clamps and insert pieces, especially from plywood boards, were used to be sure the adequate spacing for the face frames to the boxes, as well as keeping the boxes themselves square to each other while clamping them together. After the face frames were attached, I used the Craig drawer slide jig to install the soft close and self-close drawer slides with rear supports. Then on to this drawer construction. I found a great box joint, finger joint jig in the Shop Notes back catalog and built one. After I got the hang of it, making several small boxes first, I tried my hand at making all the drawers for the cabinets using it. I only messed up on one set of drawers. It's my own fault, really. I failed to properly mark the up versus down and front versus the inside of that one. So after cutting the first end, the arrows that I had used to mark each piece were no longer visible. So after a moment of frustration, I just made the replacement boards in less time than I had used to attempt to put together the messed up ones. I had to make my own calls for the glue up of these. My setup for the box joint made the fingers on the joints a different size and spacing than calls that are available for purchase online. This glue up provided the realization that the aluminum bar clamps just were not up to the task for this. Very little pressure, and they would bow very scarily. I used blue tape extensively on the inside of each corner to make it easier for glue cleanup afterwards. It really helped. I also used the tape on the cawls to make sure that the cawls did not stick to the joint on the outside. I used the Stanley block plane to smooth out the outside of the joints as I cut them slightly oversized to be sure I had a good fit. During my practice boxes, I discovered that it was very easy to cut the fingers too short, whereas you had little divots where the fingers were supposed to stick out smooth. So cutting them longer, I was able to use the Stanley block plane to smooth them to just the right surface. The drawers were then sanded and finished. Again, thanks to Stephanie, we used clear polyurethane. I used pine common boards I reclaimed from a shelving project at a previous house in order to make the drawer fronts and cabinet panels. I had to cut them to size, joint them, and then plane them to thickness. I used a couple of Stanley hand plates then to bring them to the correct clearance within each drawer opening. Using the playing card tip from numerous articles in various woodworking magazines that I found online, I positioned the drawer fronts exactly where I wanted them and clamped them into place. The top drawers were the easiest to do this with. The bottom two, the drawer above it, had to be removed in order to use this method. While clamped in place, I pre-trilled them from inside the drawer, then used 5 pocket hole style screws to hold them in place. The final touch was the cast iron strap style pulls. The current kitchen cabinets and drawers have knobs with points, which I don't understand, because both of us have numerous bruises on our hips and thighs from whoever's bad choice those were. We didn't want knobs that would catch on clothing or hair or cookware while we worked in the kitchen like these new ones. I used clear water-based polyurethane as we both love the natural wood look with all of the interesting grains and knots in the pine visible. The kitchen is still not ready for these to be installed. For now, we have them in the living room, slowly moving things out of the old cabinets into these, preparing to remove the old paneling, install actual insulation and drywall, something this house at 5,500 feet lacked when I first bought it 3 years ago. I can't wait, as there was only 7 feet of cabinetry in the kitchen, and storage space for anything is sorely lacking, and absolutely no countertop space to do baking with. Please like and subscribe and share. I'd really love to have your support, and comment below. Let me know what you think. I know that this is a slideshow, but I'm working on making sure that I film everything from now on. Talk to you soon. Glad to hear from you.